You know, I remember this talk where Angela Davis said that in respect of, you know, like gender violence and domestic violence, these are things that predominantly affect women. It's not to say that men aren't victims of that too, but predominantly it's women that are affected by that. And it's not helpful to look at these issues as women's issues, because actually they're men's issues. And if there are men that consider themselves progressive men that aren't part of that problem, it's our responsibility to be addressing those issues, to be checking other men, to be having those conversations. And I feel like as a white man, it is, you know, it's our responsibility to be addressing those issues within my community and holding that mirror up to ourselves and addressing that. Because if we're only ever fighting, and it's no shade to those of you that are fighting for causes that you're affected by, but if we only ever fight for issues that we are affected by, I would say, is it really just the injustice that we're angry about and we care about, or is it our own personal comfort and our own personal experience?
There are a couple of things in there. The first one is allies. So the data side of me says, look at the numbers, right? The data side of me says 67 million people in the UK, right? Obviously, part of that is ethnic minorities, but I haven't looked at the stats for other ethnic minorities across the board. But 3% of the British population, like 3% of 67 million. So the reality is that in any battle, right, if you're trying to make an effect change, through how many of those 3% of people are political or activists or those, right? So the numbers eventually get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller till you get that percentage of the black community that are actively trying to do something positive. The reality is those people aren't going to effect change alone. Those people aren't going to effect change without allies within the white British community who are going to say, we're going to support you. We don't understand your experience, but we want to get to learn about it, and understand where we can best support you, what we can do. There's a couple of other things. You know, the Twitter CEO, don't know why his name's just gone out my head. Yes, Dorsey is going to live in the African continent for at least 3, probably up to 6 months this year, because he sees the big changes that are happening within the African continent and potentially that the global opportunities that would create for his business and the technology industry. That's what we need. We need statements from people like him who are saying, I am intentionally going to live in the African continent for 3 to 6 months because I see big things happening. When stuff like that makes the media, mainstream media news, and people are saying, Africa isn't this place where it's just poverty and famine and big bellies and flies and all the rest of it. But the guy of one of the biggest tech companies in the whole world, who's worth how many billion, is going to live there because he sees business opportunities. That's going to start to make people think differently. And that can't come from within the black community. We aren't heads of Twitter and Facebook and Google and all those things. That has to come from people like him.
That's a good point around allyship as well, in terms of, you know, we always see bad examples of it where, you know, bad allyship looks like someone trying to like own the narrative, trying to silence the people who they're trying to help. And so I got a question for you, Adam, in terms of like you as an ally, and the online presence versus, I guess, in real life. And that could maybe be, I don't know, we're in a space where it might be one thing, right? I don't know, we live online so much now. Is it real life anyway? But in terms of activism online and allyship online, is that true activism? Do we think that online activism is true? And to yes or no on that. And also, do you do stuff outside of social media to fight anti-racism?
There's 2 questions in there, but I wanna just touch on allyship, because that's a word that personally makes me feel quite uncomfortable. And it's I would never refer to myself as an ally, right? And even when it comes to the black communities, it's not a monolithic black community, right? Yeah. There are communities, and there will be some who will consider me to be an ally, and there are some that don't want anything to do with me, and that's fine. I think the word that you mentioned, which is really important, is support, right? So an ally should be supporting you and saying, how can I assist you? How can I serve you? And how can I, like, you take the lead on that. It's not about them leading from the front, right? And that's point one. I think and in terms of allyship, I can't stress enough accountability. Like, you have to be accountable because, like I said, it's not your lived experience, right? Your first question was
So the online versus
offline.
Yeah.
So, as in, am I doing stuff offline?
Yeah.
So,
people comparatively that you need to.
for me, like, online and social media stuff is a really powerful tool, right? But for me, that should be the birthplace of your activism or the starting place of your activism, not the final destination, right? So it can be a really valuable tool, but it's really easy to fire off a tweet, right? And I see a whole bunch of people that will go on Twitter and tweet, and that's great. But when it comes to being in these spaces and being on the ground over a consistent period of time, I can count on one hand the amount of white people that I've actually seen that are really, really about that, right? So I think that online activism has created a space for people to become activists, whereas I don't really consider that. And that's why I say, I wouldn't consider myself, I don't refer to myself as an activist, especially in terms of my social media presence. That's just, that's a tool in that fight. But like I said, I fundamentally believe that that's the starting place of your destination. So that has to lead to some real life, meaningful action. And that can be, it doesn't have to be, protesting and laying down in front of airplanes, but it's in your workplace, it's in your family, in your friendship circles, it's those difficult conversations. That's where the real work is done, right? Is those difficult conversations that are taking place in your family or on the tube journey or the bus or whatever the case may be. But for me, in terms of like getting involved actively in campaigns and doing things, that's something that I fundamentally believe in and something that drives me. I've had to, going back to something you said, Nash, like I've had to really weigh up, because of my integrity matters to me more than anything, right? For me to come out of the police as a white guy and an ex-police officer, working, doing some stuff around deaths in custody and people that have died in police custody, and going on the Mark Duggan Memorial March and being involved there, like, for me to have trust and credibility and respect there wasn't something that I was just given freely. That's something that's taken time and something that I wouldn't want to lose, right? So those questions about intention, they're really important questions, and it's important to be able to answer. It's quite easy to be able to say, well, you know what, I've never taken a penny for any of this, and here's how that can be documented. Because wherever it has been profit, it's been paid directly to an organisation, do you know what I mean, that then funds that money back in, and I don't even touch it, right? I can demonstrate that. But over a period of time, particularly as that increases, so like now where I'm doing more and more of that work, I still have to feed my family and I still have to, put a roof over my head. So it's trying to figure out how and I'm still at a point where I'm not comfortable taking money for any of this stuff. But I know that for it to be sustainable for me to continue, there will become a point where I will have to. And hopefully I've got to a point where people now, I've been doing this long enough that people know who I am, and people, I've established some sort of integrity there. But yeah.
Sorry to ask another question, yeah? So, like, essentially, yeah, when you're saying you feel uncomfortable about basically getting money for quote-unquote activism, right? But not necessarily activism, but like that kind of realm. So eventually, do you feel like you'll get to a point where you're now doing talks and maybe workshops or whatever, but you're doing things on a larger scale to essentially help the black community, or to help whichever communities anti-racism, yeah? But that in itself, yeah, you've got to feed yourself, right? So you've got to take money for these things, right? But then somebody on the other coin, would you feel a certain type of way if somebody on the other side of things sees you as a white male just taking money from the black community, that now you're at a point where, listen, I've got to eat and I've got to help anti-racism, so I'm speaking to help your community, but I'm getting money from this situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for one, it's about trying to find a balance of where I can and should take money from, and where I feel comfortable and where I don't, right? So like, for example, it might be like a university or an organization where I'm okay, cool, I'm happy to take that money, and there might be like a smaller organization, or like like a sort of a youth group in a black community that I'm not going to take money from there. But also, it's what am I being asked to do, right? Because I believe that fundamentally all of us are entitled, do you know what I mean, to something for our labour. But at the same time, if BBC or one big mainstream organisation are going to pay me as a white guy to come in and talk about race, like I've said, it's not my voice that's important. So actually, somebody else should be doing that in my place. So people don't necessarily see everything that happens, because I'll turn stuff down as well as, do you know what I mean, or put other people forward, as well as, do you know what I mean, just actively doing stuff. So I think it's about finding the balance, and it's about accountability. So there are a team of people around me that, if I am, being where I shouldn't be, or I'm taking up too much space, or then those people will keep me in check. The thing is, what I can't do, and I'm open, I'll talk to anyone, do you know what I mean, and I'll answer any question from anyone, but I can't be accountable to everybody. Yeah. But there are, respected people, and, community leaders, and, all of this stuff that are engaged in this work that fundamentally I will always be accountable to. And for me, that's really important.
And it's interesting, like the views on, because I think like when people are doing activism work, they should get paid for it, regardless of where they're from. For me, it's the value of what you do. So I think if someone goes into an organization, say for example, a white person goes into an organization, talks about race, but actually the value that they're giving, and sometimes, unfortunately, talking about race from a black perspective and talking about race from a white perspective is very different.
And I'll tell you why I disagree.
So one second. So I think if there is value being added there, I personally don't have a problem with payment. And I think there is a question here around, and I guess what we're speaking about in the car is that it's very easy, and I'm in this position now actually as well, where you can do, what you do, it starts off as a social thing, and it starts off because you want to help people. When you get attention from that, you get recognition from that. We're all humans, we can all admit we like to be get recognized for the work we do. There is I think that for everyone goes through a period where your intentions around what you really wanted to do can get clouded because you are getting a certain amount of attention from that, not even necessarily money, but attention from that. And just that really important thing of being able to realize when that happens and make sure that the social aspect is at the forefront. I said I'm going through that at the moment because I will get paid to go and talk to organizations about fatherhood and whatnot, and MFF and whatnot, and that it was always is based around the value I can give in terms of building communities and messages and whatnot. But at the same time, I can recognize that when you go viral for something or someone massively tweets you, it's a nice feeling. And it can very easily go over to the point of, I'm going to do more of this work because I want more of that feeling. Versus, it becomes like you. And I think we've seen that online with a lot of different, activists online. So I want to have a conversation about that. I think you were going to say something. But afterwards, let's have a conversation about, do we notice that online? And how do we discern who has the right intentions and who doesn't? But yeah, you can say something.
So we'll come to that. I think what I just wanted to say in response to what you were saying is I don't necessarily think the issue lays with people taking money for the work that they're doing. I think where it becomes a problem, particularly around anti-racism work, is that black people, and if I'm honest, in terms of my own personal experience, quite often black women and black queer women have been doing this work and have been doing this labour for free for many, many years and not getting paid for it and being burnt out. And we're now seeing people like me or other white people that are coming in and profiting from it. And I think that's the issue, is who is getting paid for their labour? Why is, an organisation happy for me to come in and talk to them about race and white privilege, but not happy for, somebody else that has been doing this for 10 years before me to come in and pay them. I think that's the issue, and that's where I see a problem. Because for me to do that is I am taking money out of someone else's pocket. If I can say, well, actually, I'll come because I understand you want me here because I'm a police officer and because of that experience, but I'm only going to come if I can bring this person. Or actually, do you know what? I was invited to do a talk about racism within the education system, and I'm like, well, I don't really know too much about that. I'm not the best person to do that. Maybe you should talk to this person, because otherwise it is just about you. It's about having your voice heard and your face seen in that space. And I don't want it to be that. So I think that's the issue. But yeah, let's jump to...
Yeah, so how do you feel that in terms of online? There are quite prominent people that we all know, don't mention their names.
Name names.
Feel free to name the names if you want to name them.
Looking for a Twitter store.
Yeah. So, what do you think about that? Do you feel like there are people who are just kind of, it's all about ego now? And can you tell the difference?
So I've had a lot of conversations in the last 6 months to a year about this exact topic. And there are individuals we can name off this who I am very, very suspicious of what is actually going on. But the only defense I will give them is that maybe that's me like falling into the Twitter rabbit hole and thinking that's what's going on, and maybe I don't actually know. I'm not close enough to know for certain. But something that Adam said, it's easy to tweet. It's so easy. If it's so easy to tweet that maybe I'm an activist. Do you know what I mean? I can fire off 100 tweets in 2 days if I wanted to about all sorts of things. And I'm not saying it's easy to gain a following, but it's easier than you think to get traction over something if it bangs the right way. And then before you know it, you're there and you've got a profile. And I guess the only way you really know is who's putting in the real work. Now, I don't know because I'm not involved in that. But
I'm putting in the real work. What do you think I'm putting in?
Putting in the real work is who's doing stuff that you can't see. Okay. And that's why I don't know, because I can't see it. So who's actually putting in the real work? I don't judge anything by Twitter conversations anymore. I used to be big into the whole kind of, oh, this person said this, it's so true, let me retweet that. I kind of stopped doing all that now, because part of me is like, nah, but either A, I could say that myself, or B, you're doing this for me to retweet it. But then you're in that kind of very kind of shaky ground of what's wrong with retweeting stuff if it's right versus is that person really got the best of intentions anyway? So somebody sends a tweet out, let's say, pick something that's happened recently. Oh, Meghan Markle. So that's okay, let's use that as an example. So the Meghan Markle, Harry thing's recent. I just realised this is coming up. Anyway, the Meghan Markle, Harry thing has happened recently. And that is a very easy thing to jump on right now. Bang out a quick tweet which goes viral where you say something. And you could really ramp around that and go, yeah, because I'm down for the cause and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I don't know. Adam, you'll know better than all of us because you're closer to it. But I just think we have to be very, very careful now in certainly 2020 whose voices we're really amplifying. I don't know how we do the research, but in our hearts of hearts, I think we can all tell that there's certain individuals that are possibly wanting that amplification, not wanting to put in the work.
It's actually easier than what we think, because sorry to mention it again, data. Because the reality is that there's a term at the moment that when someone says something, it's have you got your receipts? Where's the research? Send me the link to whatever. And people are slowly, very very slowly but surely coming to that realization. Although it's not enough people coming to that realization, but there are enough people. Like someone will say something, I'll say, just give me the link to the research for that, or can you show? and that's good, but in the grand scheme of things, it's only a small percentage. But the reality is that for my project, for example, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and for me, the people who are doing the work on the ground or doing the real work, I see not just one random thing, but I see a series of things. I see a series of things over time. I see other people saying, hey, that person did this and that person did this and that. You know, when Elliot mentioned your name, I was like, yeah, I know who he is. And, you know, why should I know? Because I know you follow my Black and British Twitter account. I've seen you comment on a number of things, whatever. So I came into this not having met you, but like, well, you know what? I kind of see the stuff that he's doing, his attempts to change the narrative and so on and so forth. So my impression of you was already shaped by the fact that, yes, you could have lied and you could have done it for whatever reasons, but my impression was... So the point is that actually, that's one part of it. The next part of it is the fact that when you look at some of the organizations or people that are associated with organizations, what they tend to have done in the work that I've collected is they're not pushing themselves. It's always about the cause. It's always about the cause. It's always they might say once in a while, hey, but really that's very rarely those people say that. There are other people say, hey, I won an award and blah, 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 this and that. Yeah, great. I don't really care, right? What are you doing on the ground? Because if you're doing it, I'll find out about it, because you know the stuff that I'm doing around collecting the data will soon show me. So you've got a number of, and the example that I'm going to raise is this. So there are a couple of organizations doing things around black men and black boys and trying to empower them and the rites of passage and things like that. So Mandem is one of them that you do something with. Westside Young Leaders Academy, Manhood Academy, Amos Bursary, the Alato Foundation, Blood, Father to Father, and I can go on and on. You know what? Those guys are organizing events. You know, Global Manhood Academy. You know, they have a Wednesday and a Saturday thing where they're getting black boys in and they're teaching them about all kinds of things about life. Those people are doing the work. So you can see that they're coming from an altruistic point of view. Their motivations are encouraging young black boys, young black men to kind of take a particular path and not take this particular path over here. So actually, from my own project, there are people genuinely doing the work, and it is about the project, it's about the thing that they believe with. It isn't about them, it isn't about clout. In fact, one of the startling things that I realized more recently, and I was like, that can't be right. And then I some more, and I haven't put the data together properly yet. But actually, the people that or project that I've seen doing the most work have the least amount of followers.
I'm glad you just said that. I'm now going to ask. So I didn't know Adam. No offense. I didn't know. But Elliot sent the thing. And I went and watched some stuff on Adam to go do my research. And then I went onto Adam's Twitter and I was like, oh, because there are people who I think have done less than you, who have got numbers. I won't say numbers. If we're going to say that things like followers matter, I'm seeing numbers. I'm like, so my initial impression was, he must really be putting in work because his numbers ain't. That's how I saw it as the inverse. Because I was like, I now see it as the more you've got, possibly the less you're actually.
If you want to get 10,000 followers, 15,000, 20,000 followers, all those, you have to put in some work on just doing it. If you do that, you can't do the work on the ground at the same time. The two don't correlate. The bigger people who've got numbers in that I follow in terms of my project really go up to when they're celebrities. But the people who sit in that, not celebrity, but other than that, definitely no names. Definitely no names. There are people doing some amazing things within the black community that we don't know about. And I'm going to give you one example. It's not calling somebody out. It's just giving you an example of something. So, Elliot, you know, I met a guy this week, and I've been having a conversation with him on email and so on and social media, a few bits and bobs. And not the most recent list that went out from the Power List organization, who lists the top 100 influential people of African and Caribbean heritage. But the year before, and he was at top of the list as the most influential black person. He's actually an American guy who's been in the UK for 20 years. A guy called Rick Lewis. He's had a scholarship for black students to go to whatever university or for donkey's years. He's put through loads and loads of people. Nobody knows about him, right? His numbers on his Black Heart Foundation Twitter handle and Instagram handle are low comparatively. But people made a huge thing of Stormzy, and I'm not criticizing Stormzy because what he's done with his scholarship, sending a couple of people to Cambridge and supporting them because he can't work when you go to Cambridge University. You're not allowed for that to interfere with your studies. But people made a big thing. Well, my man here is doing crazy amount of he runs has sporting events with golfers and whatever as part of his foundation to raise money with big celebrities so they can pour money into his foundation through these charitable events. Nobody knows that. Nobody cares about Rick Lewis. So that's my point, that actually even a guy who runs a £12 billion investment property fund, who's got big offices in Berkeley Square, who, it was amazing for me to go and see him. Nobody knows about him, but actually he's doing crazy.
I don't want to shout out, I completely agree. I want to shout out a guy called Courtney, who runs Father to Father. And in my journey in this whole thing, he's the one person I've come across, and I'm like, mate, like, if I ever won the lottery or anything, outside of my family and whatnot, you deserve it, because so I'm on a WhatsApp group that he set up, and it's with a lot of the organizations that you mentioned, a lot of the founders of those organizations, and just the way I see him navigating, like, puts the organization first. He encourages other people. So if there's an opportunity that, like you were saying about education and whatnot, if it's not your thing, he'll put someone else forward for it. He'll encourage everyone to work together. And with him, I'm like, it's about the cause. Yeah. It's about the cause. Yeah. And just to play devil's advocate here, though, so we've got those people. But is there also a space for, because we know that, so Stormzy, for example, what he did, of course, he only sent 2, whereas Rick Lewis sent many more. But in terms of PR and visuals, there's an impact in that too. So is there a space for people who have big profiles, who have a lot of followers, saying the right things? Is there a role for that too? Because we do need...
I think they call it optics, don't they, right? Yeah, I think they call it optics. And they're absolutely easily, because Rick Lewis may not want that big profile and all the rest of it. He probably, as a guy who's in his mid-50s, isn't going to appeal to the younger generation necessarily. So there's absolutely a place for other people doing that. My thing is that, and it seeps into the mainstream narrative as well, in that the mainstream are happy to build Stormzy up, and to, as soon as anything else, just kind of get him and drop the blows and and all those wrestling moves on his ass when they see fit. So, but again, we were talking about it in the WhatsApp group. He rolls with that. He's happy to do that. He's happy to call people out when they've gone in on him, and so he doesn't have an issue, whether it be an age thing or whatever it is, just him as a person. There's definitely a place for people with bigger profiles. My concern would be where the people who are just doing it for coin, because don't know Stormzy, but I'd like to think, of all the things that he could do, he could be doing other things to get coin, not setting up his scholarship, right? So it's the people who are on the one side. There's this external persona, but actually, like we both said, the issues are about them. The issues aren't about the cause, and sooner or later it becomes apparent. Even if to a while it feels like it's about the cause, sooner or later the truth comes out, right? Yeah. One way or another it will come out. And
who really kind of stands the test of time, right? Like who's like right now, it's kind of been fashionable to be talking about knife crime and to be addressing these issues, right? But this issue's been going on for years, and it will be going on for years long after the media are bored of pushing this conversation. So it's who's still going to be there. And I think that for me, what I'm looking at when I look at other people, but more importantly when I'm analysing myself, is asking, what is this costing you, and what are you gaining from it?
Yeah.
And that's a really good indicator. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, all right, cool. There are people that are doing way more important work than me and doing a lot more that don't get the accolades and don't get the credit and everything else. And like you were talking about the numbers, right? But like the numbers don't pay my bills, right?
Yeah,
even if I had them, right? A retweet I don't get paid for a retweet. Yeah. And ultimately, if I'm frank with you, I don't want to do this. I don't enjoy going on like BBC or Sky News and having these conversations. You know, in 2016, I had like 127 death threats. I've cut off my whole family. Like, I don't want, like, there are days where it's a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like the mental pressure or the emotional pressure that has and juggling that with everything else. I would love it if there was another white police officer that was having this conversation, so I didn't have to do it. Right? That's cool. You do that. That's fine. I don't care about having my face on the TV or getting the retweets at the end of the day, because that's not going to put food in my son's belly. But I look around and I don't really see that happening. I don't really see anybody else having that conversation, which is why I'm trying to do something that I fundamentally.
And with the death threats, how did you receive those?
Online.
Okay.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter. Somebody started a crowdfunder to have me deported.
Seriously?
To where?
To where?
Manchester.
The GoFundMe was $100,000, right? So it was like I was flattered that anybody thinks I'm worth that much.
You should have said, "I'll take it. Give that to me."
If I knew
I'll go
then
get on a
what I
plane.
know now, I'd have been like, cool, I'll start packing because I'm out.
And also on the family issue, so I guess the overall thing here is activism and fatherhood as well. You said you cut off your own family. What your whole family? How did that happen? What happened around that?
So you have to understand, I come from a very conservative / right wing white family, who, like all of my grandparents, majority of my cousins are either like Marines or Navy or Army. So I come from like a military background. So for me now to not just to come out of the police, but be so vocal and visible, talking about.
You're like the black sheep, basically.
I'm not going to use that. So like there is a sense of shame, because it's like I'm talking about whiteness, and I'm talking about white supremacy, and I'm talking about the like colonialism and these issues that for my family that's quite embarrassing, and for some of them who have like these really kind of ignorant racist views. Like I said, that's where the real work happens, right? I can't be on BBC News with so much vim and energy talking about X, Y, and Z, and then come home and turn a blind eye and be deaf to the little. And I'm not talking about really wild, out there comments, but these Meghan Markle comments of there's just something about her, or the
the colour of her skin.
I can't be doing that and then turning a blind eye in my own family or friendship circles or workplace. I'm not prepared to do that, and people around me would never respect me or tolerate that. So like there has been a personal cost, which I don't necessarily always talk about, because I'm like, well, it's not about that. It's something that comes with it.
Does it bother you? Just kind of hinged it to fatherhood here. So your son's what, 4?
Yeah, 4. By the time this comes out.
What, next year? Give me a turnaround, man. We'll be getting out in a couple of weeks.
Does it? How does this affect you on a father level? So I was saying off camera, Elliott's got MFF. Now it's a wholesome thing. You've got your black British one, and obviously you're doing what you're doing, and everything that we do, there's a legacy to what we're doing, irrespective. So you could be a footballer for all I know, whatever. The point is, there's a legacy to what we're doing. And to all 4 of us sitting here, we all obviously care deeply about being the right kind of dad. Now, I'm not doubting you as a dad or as a father, but what I am saying is there an element of you it's like, boy, he's going to grow up, you're still going to be deep in it, unless for whatever reason. And you may come across the little things like, just give me a particular scenario. Let's say you're on BBC one day. You've been called in because the latest nonsense has taken place on the streets, and somebody says, right, let's ring up Adam, let's get him on. By this time now, your son's year 3 in primary school. And a kid's, this all sounds hypothetical, but it's actually probably realistic. And a kid or their parent or something sees you on TV because you've come to the playground to pick up. Do you see what I mean? So does any of this ever go swirling in your head in terms of what am I doing and how does that affect me? Affect my son, sorry. Do you get where I'm from?
Yeah, definitely. 1000%. Like I've got my son's hairband on my wrist, right? That you see me playing with, and that's something that I always wear and always kind of have as a reminder. But there are two ways that it affects me in terms of parenting and a father. One is time. So by virtue of the fact that I said I don't want to take an income from this, it means I'm having to work a full-time job to earn a living and then do this in my own time because it's something I believe in and care about. But I also have to manage being a dad and being present and being there and being a good dad as much as I can and being able to support him. So on the one hand, I think about how does this affect, my relationship with my son and my ability to be the best dad I can possibly be and meet his needs. Two, I think about his personal safety, which is kind of like what you were touching on. There have been times in 2016, it's calmed down since then, but it still crops up time and time again where my son gets brought into it, or I've had abuse that's kind of leveled at him, which is obviously an issue. And I, where I'm concerned is most of the time my son is with me, right? So like most of the events that I go to, especially if it's on a weekend, more time my son might be there with me, right? So I'm always thinking if I'm on my own, it's fine, right? You can fight, you can run, you do whatever you need to do, but when I've got him, I have to think about his safety. Most of the time, if I'm honest, I guess I have this, maybe it's a silly view, but sometimes some of the abuse from these anonymous trolls, I'm like, you're probably 15, sitting in your mum's box room, you're never going to feel comfortable to come to some of these spaces anyway. But there's always that what if, and that's always something that I have to weigh up and consider, and that always has to be at the forefront. In terms of like legacy, I mean, like, I don't know how I will manage when he starts going to primary school and those things start arising. I'll have to deal with that as and when that arises, and that will always have to be the number one priority. And if that means I have to fall back or whatever, then that's what I have to do. But in terms of legacy, I just want my son. I want my son to live in a better world. Do you know what I mean? And I want my son to know that I did what I could because I fundamentally believe in it. And that I was prepared to, put myself on the line for that, so that he and other people could live a better life. Because at the end of the day, yeah, my son's a very light-skinned, mixed-race child, but in the eyes of some, just like Meghan Markle, he's still going to be othered. In the eyes of the police, he's still going to be a young black boy. That's still going to be his experience, and it isn't mine. So how am I equipped as a dad to shepherd him and guide him through the experiences that he's going to have?
How do you have that conversation
with him?
We're all going to have that. Remember in the previous podcast, we talked about having the conversation about what race is with your child. And have you had your? In fact, you had yours. You had yours. I haven't had one. My daughter's too young. But similar to you, 1.5 years old, mixed race. It's always funny to me because I'm always like, you are mixed race, but at the end of the day, 99% of this country is going to see you as black. First, and that's the reality. That's the reality of this country. And she's too young for me to have a conversation. Your boy's probably, about 2 years away? Or have you already tried to have the conversation?
No, I think with that, it's not something that I would force. Like when it happens, we talk about it. So he's aware of race.
Yeah.
I've noticed that he started to use it as a descriptive. And some of that, especially initially, was without him even realizing. So when he's watching cartoons and stuff, you've got like the Green Man and like, so he likes Paw Patrol, but there's another one, these cats. TJ Masks, right? And they're different colours. Right? They'll refer to them by like the green one and the red one and blah 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 blah. And then he's carried that into the real world. So you know, when we're on a train, there was one time where he was like, oh, referred to someone as the black man. So like he's started to become aware of that as a descriptor. The conversation hasn't really gone much further than that because I don't want to rob him of his childhood, and I don't want to. Do you know what I mean? Like I understand that it needs to be had on wire, but also that whole conversation of, do you know what I mean, like as a young black boy or mixed race boy or whatever, that you're gonna have to work twice as hard, or like I don't want to.
That's the narrative we need to.
Yeah. That's a whole other podcast series as well.
If and when we need to have that conversation, fine. But I'd rather do everything that I can, so that those challenges and experiences that I minimise, in whatever ways I can. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's at school or whatever, that it's me having to go through those difficult. Do you know what I mean? If I need to be in the school every day talking to the teacher, you know, because he's come home and said the teacher said X, Y, or Z, then, you know, I would want to do that so I can minimise that damage and that trauma for him. But at some point, we'll have to have those conversations, and I don't have the answers. But that's why, you know, a lot of like raising children and fatherhood is about like doing it in community, right? Yeah. Like spaces like this, and you know, like surround. Like for me, it's been really important not just having books and toys and stuff where he sees representation of people like him, but there's people around in the real world, like godparents. You know, shout out Dope Black Dads in the village that have kind of opened up a network to a wider group of people. But having people who, like yourself, have already had that conversation. So I'm like, I can learn from you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna be like, how did that go for you? And like, do you know what I mean? And we can kind of help one another because I haven't got all the answers. And I don't know, and it's scary as hell. But I'm committed to, and I'll probably fuck up and make some mistakes. And I hope
every parent does that.
Yeah,
man. It's what it is.
But I'm committed to doing whatever I can to get that as right as I possibly can.
That's a good way to end, man. Nice, wholesome, positive way. But this has been a good discussion, man. I think, you know, the whole, we've covered loads of ground around activism, around online activity, around fatherhood. I mean, what else do you want to say to the people around the work that you do, and your views about anything that we've spoken about?
It's been big, boys. Well, we've gone left, right, up, down. It's hard to kind of generalize what we've been talking about in one, but actually, let's go back to just something Adam just said. I think ultimately, as fathers, we owe it to our children to know that we tried our best. I think you actually said something, I don't know if you realise what you said, Adam, to minimise the trauma that they will face. Just because we experience something. So, you know, when you use that line, you don't want to have to say to him, you're going to have to try 120%. I must have heard that from my dad 1,000 times. You're going to have to try 120%. So the idea is, why would we repeat not that there's not benefits, but why would we repeat the previous generation's trauma when we can do better for what's coming behind us? I think that's the general kind of message there.
Yeah.
I think we were saying in the car about, you know, not everyone feels the calling, if you like, of a cause, and that's okay. But actually, you know, lots of things change you as a father, and for me, you know, this is one of the biggest changes. You know, to have my boys grow up and feel that they're unstoppable. There's going to be some context around the challenges that they might have, but the narrative, the point you raised, Mash, which is the narrative can't ever be that actually negative. And by the way, the game's against you, and so that's the starting point. No, the starting point has to be, you know what, you work and do whatever it is that you can, and I will provide you with all the opportunities that I can provide for you. Yes, there may be some negative opportunities, negative things that happen along that journey, but don't ever think that there is a ceiling that you can't ever break through. And that's what drives the Black and British Project. That's what, you know, ultimately drives why I continue doing something that that I want to be able to hand over to my boys when they get to an old enough age to say, hey, you know what? These are the things that you can achieve. We have a black man who is running a $12 billion property investment fund business. We have another person doing that, another person doing that. That's where your limits are, because they're so far up there that the large majority of people don't achieve them, that I'm effectively saying the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice, man. Adam, final words.
Angela Davis talks about the way in which that we measure our success and our work, right? And says that actually often we might not experience the fruit of this in our lifetimes, and that we are living the world that the people that went before us imagined, right? And that's what we're trying to do for our kids. We're trying to imagine the world that we want them to live. And not just that, but, you know, like, our children don't exist for us. They're not just an extension of us. They're their own individual people. So I want my son to be who he wants to be in the world, and to support him and equip him to be able to do that. And I feel personally, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I'm sure that it probably resonates, that for most of my adult life, I haven't just been learning, but a lot of it has been unlearning. A lot of it has been unlearning, and I don't want my son to have to do the same level of unlearning that I've had to do, right? So many men come into emotional maturity, you know, so much later on in life, because, you know, for various different reasons. I don't want him to have to do that. So I think that, you know, in terms of like you said, being better than our parents, and that's no disrespect to our parents or saying that they were bad parents or got it wrong, like they did the best that they could. Do you know what I mean? And there's no manual for it. But having experienced that ourselves and knowing the impact that that's had on us, we can learn from that, and we can be better for our children and for the next generation.
That's great, man. I think this for me, I'm so proud of this conversation, because I think it's needed. I think, you know, I want to thank you for your honesty, Adam, for coming down and talking so open honesty. It's been really good. Eager to hear what people think. Please do get involved. Obviously, Daddy Debates podcast, brought to you by musicfootballfatherhood.com. What's resonated with you? I think from my perspective, there's been so many things we've spoken about in terms of our roles as fathers and just human beings, in terms of the, you know, I don't think people are obligated to fight for a cause. Me personally, I think we should, if you're capable of it. I think we all have that kind of, if we have that calling, I think we should do it. I think that's the only way we're going to create the world we want, is by us taking our steps. And I think through this conversation, we've found ways that we can do that. We discussed some of the challenges. But it's been great, man. I've learned loads, and I hope you have too. So check us out, musicfootballfatherhood.com, #DailyDebates, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.